So, very good morning, dear friends. This Sunday morning, we are sitting for the very important topic, code of ethics. Very importantly, three I's that the chairman of EIRC this year has uh, taken up for the next 3 years. We can say like integrity, independence, and information technology. So first one, integrity. It's a very important code of ethics we should follow. We know, but we should we should follow, and what are the integrity in that. So we will just go through that with the Ranjit Ji Agrawal and Mr. C.N. Vaje from Mumbai. They will elaborate on the case study basis. The code of ethics, how it is very important nowadays. First of all, many congratulations, Ranjit ji, for being a third term CCM from our region. Many congratulations, sir. And now requesting our past convener, senior member, Ramavtarji Joshi, to please formally introduce uh, our first speaker, Ranjit ji Agrawal. Ramavtarji, over to you.
Thank you, Savaryaji. Ranjitji need not to have any introduction. Every chartered accountant in this Eastern India Regional Council and in other parts of the India are also very known to him. And most of the students like him. When he was a member of East India Regional Council, he was very, all the students were used to love him. And he was a very prominent chartered accountants among the students. Though it is a requirement of our protocol of this meetings and seminars to formally introduce Mr. Agarwal. Mr. Ranjit Agarwal is a fellow member having more than 20 years of experience and holds diploma in information in system audit from ICAI. He graduated in commerce from prestigious Calcutta University. Beside being an outstanding practicing member, he is an associate member of ICSI also. He has been a member of EIRC ICI for 2 terms from 2009 till 2015 and has made valuable contribution to the members and students fraternity alike. During chairmanship in 2013-14, EIRC received the coveted award for Best Regional Council. As a avid speaker and expert on code of ethics, professional opportunities, and student motivation, he is a regular on many fora. Currently serving the third consecutive term in the Central Council since 2016. He has chaired many committees in his tenure and has many accomplishments to his credit. As a visionary, techno-savvy reformist, in 2018, he chaired the Professional Development Committee that implemented bank branch audit software and the much acclaimed landmark reform UDIN. It is a, you can say UDIN is a disciplinary mechanism for chartered accountants and also a very well ethics. So we have to be documented. All the audit reports should be documented. So he has implemented this UDIN. He also led the ICI group that presented the FRFB bill before Joint Parliamentary Committee. Further, in 2019, he became convener of a group constituted to implement UDIN in all SAR countries. Now, I request all the participants, please give a thumbs up to Mr. Ranjit Agarwal and clap for him.
Thank you, sir.
Over to Sandeep.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, thank you, sir. Now, Ranjit ji, over to you, sir. Please give interest us, sir.
Thank you, Sandeep, convener of the study circle, Pratik Chaudhary, deputy convener, and very my gratitude to Ramavtarji Joshi for saying such a nice word for me, whether I deserve it or not. And very respected our speaker from Mumbai, Vaje sir, an authority in the disciplinary proceedings and the code of ethics across the country. He has served and represented many members in the disciplinary proceeding against in front of the ICI bench. and he is one of the best speaker as far as code of ethics and standard of auditing other topics are concerned. All the past convener of the study circle, I can see Surajji Junjunwala and others, and all the members. A very good morning to this Sunday morning. I welcome all of you in this very important topic on code of ethics. The detail about this code of ethics will be dealt by Vijay sir. Just 10-15 minutes, I will give you the overview. What is this code of ethics and how this code of ethics is going to be important day by day, and the kind of regulatory requirement in our country by the various regulators are increasing day by day. Now we cannot afford to make any mistakes while certifying the financial statement as a true and fair. If you see the code of ethics concept, everything everybody know, but the basic fundamental principle of our code of ethics says that the chartered accountant who is certifying the financial statement should be honest and competent. He should not be related with any information which are misleading or fraudulent information. He should be innovative and adapt the technology with the changing times, and he should continuously learning and upskilling himself or herself. These are the 4-5 basic requirement of our code of ethics, which has been given in the preamble of our code of ethics. As you are aware that we have two schedules, Schedule 1 and Schedule 2 in our CA Act. Now, Schedule 1 has 19 clauses which talks about the misconduct done within the fraternity. The Schedule 1 talks about whatever misconduct has been happened inside the fraternity, that will deal with Schedule 1. And the Schedule 2 talks about whatever conduct the members has done which are impacting the outside the fraternity, like government, regulator, public at large, various stakeholder. If they are impacted with your conduct, then those kind of conduct or misconduct will fall in the Schedule 2. Now, Schedule 1 and Schedule 2 both have including 34 clauses. Vijay sir will tell all these things in detail. But the fundamental principle of Schedule 2 talks about you cannot be associated with the misleading information, fraudulent information. You cannot say the financial statements are true and correct where it is not in that line. All these things are covered in Schedule 2, and it is more harsh than Schedule 1 in terms of penal provisions are concerned, like 5 lakhs monetary penalty, removal of your name from the register of members starting from 1 day to lifetime, or reprimand. All these provisions are there. But if you see the new bill which has been placed in the parliament, where the government has revised all the 3 act of the 3 professional body like CS, CS and cost, in which all these penal provisions they have increased like anything. They have this penal provision has gone up to 50 lakhs rupees, and the imprisonment up to lifetime. All these provisions they have incorporated, which is right now is a very minimal. Now it is going to multiply in many aspects as proposed in the bill if it get passed in the present form. There are many self-interest threats which we talk about in our code of ethics. What kind of threats? What kind of threats are there in our code of ethics? Self-interest threat, self-review threat, advocacy threat. All these threats are defined. While discharging your duty as a professional accountant, what kind of threats can you encounter in course of your proceeding or in course of your attached function? Like if you are quoting very low fees in a tender document, it is a threat. If you have a close relationship with your client, 20, 30 long year, that is a threat. If you are accepting gifts from your client where the amount is very, very substantial, it is a threat. If you are preparing a data which are responsible for generating the record which you are going to audit, it is a threat. And if you are working under the pressure of the client, you don't do this because leave it this part, that part, by so many calls and pressure tactics are adopted by the client, and you are coming to that pressure. These are so many threats are defined in our code of ethics where a member can encounter, can overcome while discharging. So how to deal with these threats? The code of ethics also talks about how to mitigate those threats. If you are encountering some threats while discharging your duty and you want to mitigate, they are also giving a way out. how you can mitigate these threats by giving a proper disclosure, not doing the assignment in place of yourself, your partner can sign, or you can not sign the balance sheet at all. All these kind of way out are also mentioned in our code of ethics. We have also a guidance note issued by the AASB, which talks about the independence of auditor. If you see the guidance note on independence of auditor, all the small issue which we encounter while dealing with the day-to-day formality of discharging our duty, all these things are covered in that guidance note. They talk about how you can be independent while discharging a duty. Giving you one small example, like a provisional financial statement, or this uh, there are two standards which talks about SA 3400, which talks about provisional financial statement or prospective financial statement. Now there are two standards in our institute prescribed by AASB, which says ki SAE, Standards of Audit and Engagement 3400, which talks about prospective financial statement. So whether a chartered accountant can sign a prospective financial statement or a data which are normally asked by the bank, while provisional balance sheet or anything or prospective balance sheet they ask by the client to be certified by a chartered accountant. So our standards are very, very clear. A chartered accountant practice cannot certify the prospective financial statement or provisional financial. They have given a standard for that, and they've given a reporting format also for that. And if you go by those standards and reporting format, it's a very clear in 100% term that you cannot sign provisional or a prospective financial statement. But if you go by those standards with the given reporting format, you can sign. You can sign, you can generate the UDI, but the disclaimer, the reporting format is already prescribed by the ICI. So if you follow that, there is no problem. But most of the members are not aware what is the guideline of the ICI as far as signing of the provisional financial statement is concerned or prospective financial statement is concerned. All these standards are already there. And if you see about this new code of ethics, which is now 2-3 parameters had been deferred because of the pandemic in last 2 years. Now from 1st April 2022, these our new code of ethics has been implemented fully. Whatever some issues which have deferred in last 2 years, which has now become applicable from 1st April 2022. Whether it's a matter of a NOCLAR, where we can take a whole new session on this NOCLAR subject. It's a very, very big subject and very impacting the entire fraternity, including member industry. Then we have the fees, 15% fees clauses were there, which has been deferred. Now with some threshold, it has now come back from 1st April 2022. And most importantly, friends, when we see the compliance of the code of ethics by our member, now the time has come that you cannot afford to say a lackluster attitude while signing the financial statement. In our institute, we have two boards, Financial Reporting Review Board and Tax Audit Quality Review Board. Now, what are the role of these boards? These boards take the financial statement and tax audit report randomly from the public domain. And then there is a 3-tier structure which has been devised by these boards, where one reviewer will review the financial statement tax audit report done by CA, then a group of the person will do, and then the board will do. After going through this 3 layer of scrutiny, the board give a advisory to the concerned chartered accountant that you have done so many negligence or mistakes or common error in this balance sheet while giving your audit report. So be careful henceforth. If there is a gross negligence by the auditor while discharging their balance sheet audit in those reports, then the matter can go to the disciplinary. So this was the practice adopted by the institute just to make aware the members at large what kind of mistakes you are making, and you please refrain from doing all these kind of mistakes. But now NFRA has come additional regulator. Now the NFRA is also doing on the same line which the institute is doing in FRRB and the Tax Audit Quality Review Board. But there is a difference. Now what is the difference? the NFRA now picks up any listed company balance sheet which has been audited by CA, and they give a complete scrutiny of that balance sheet. And after going through the complete scrutiny of the balance sheet, they give an opportunity of being heard to the concerned chartered accountant or concerned management. And when they receive the reply from the chartered accountant member, then they give their final report and host in a public website of NFRA. And they made it mandatory to those company, please consider this finding in their board meeting. And then they give this report to the concerned central government or whichever regulator is there for their necessary further action. So now, if you see the latest report of NFRA, which is talks about Prabhu Steel Industry Limited, 60 finding they have made it. Wherever you have not done the disclosure of accounting standard, auditing standard, company law violation, whatever disclosure you have not been able to do it, whether loan to director, loan to corporates, loan shareholders money, all these financial instrument, all these, if you go through that report in the public domain of NFRA website, you can find how meticulous the scrutiny of the balance sheet is done by NFRA. And now note it is now an open secret, it is on the public domain. The chartered accountant can see, the management can see, and they can realize what kind of mistakes they are making. And now after seeing those reports, the SEBI or the MCA or the income tax department, they are free to take whatever action they want. Because now all these findings are in the report. There is a section in our company which talks about 129.1, which says the financial statement should give true and fair view. And it should be conformity with the compliance of the accounting standard issued by section 133 of the Companies Act. Now 129.7 has the penal provision. If you are not following as per 129.1 and 133, then 129.7 says there is a penal provision for not complying all these things. So all these things are there in the Companies Act. In addition to that, we have our code of ethics. So a chartered accountant in practice, while discharging their duty as a true and fair view, if they are not complying with the requirement of the law and the code of ethics of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, then things are not in the right way if they are not doing so. And now, if there are 7,000 listed company in India, out of 13 lakh company registered with the MCA, all these 7,000 listed company are under the lens of the NFRA. Now you cannot afford to make any kind of non-compliance or mistake if you want to continue your certificate of practice. Institute of Chartered Accountants India is also considering in the revised syllabus that whether the certificate of practice, if you have passed a chartered accountancy examination, so whether after passing immediately we should give the certificate of practice, or there should be some training program or some examination or some kind of should be there before giving the certificate of practice, which is prevalent in other parts of the world, in other accounting body. You will not get the certificate of practice the way you want. You have to justify, you have to fulfill some parameter before starting your certificate of practice. So this in renewal of cases of practice in other country, they have to go through a particular exam. If you don't pass that exam while applying for renewal of the COP does not get renewed in many countries of the world. So these kind of things, Institute is also thinking now whether we should adopt these kind of practice or not. So the COP is going to be a huge responsibility cast on the members at large, because they are certifying something. On the basis of that, the investors should not get defrauded. Their money should not be vanished on the basis of the reliance they have made on the signature of the chartered accountant. So that's why the code of ethics is now very, very important. And nobody, those who are in certificate of practice, in addition to member in industry also, because NOCLAR has come for member in industry also, they cannot afford to miss or ignore these kind of code of ethics. With these just a small overview, I thank all of you for coming in the Sunday morning. The detailed discussion of 34 clauses of Schedule 1, Schedule 2, self-interest threat, all 5 kind of pillars of the code of ethics will be dealt by the Vajay sir. He has agreed to deal all these things in detail for the benefit of the members. So thank you very much for your patience listening on this Sunday morning. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Ranjit ji. It's a nice overview, sir. We have just gone through the overview and the regulatory aspect, how the regulators now looking into for the CA related to compliance part. Uh, Now over to Chandrasekhar Narayan Vajesher from Mumbai. He is just not a speaker of taxation and professional matter. He is also a speaker on some spiritual matters like Bhagavad Gita, Mahabharata, Ramayan. So we will have a assent of all these in there is deliberations also. So with now requesting our past convener and senior member Mr. Suresh Junjunwala ji to please introduce our today's speaker, CN Waji sir.
Thank you, Sandeep ji. It is my privilege to introduce Vaje sir. As Ranjit ji told, Chandrasekhar Vaje is well-known chartered accountant in Western region. He is a practicing chartered accountant since last 40 years. He is an active participant in the work of many professional bodies of CA. He has delivered lecture and written articles on taxation, banking, and allied subject. He is also on Code of Ethics of Chartered Accountants. He has delivered lectures and written article on Valmiki Ramayan, Mahabharata, Bhagavad Gita, and many other social subjects. He has anchored musical and other cultural programs also. He is actively connected with arts and literature. He has directed plays in Sanskrit language and also worked for promotion of Sanskrit language. He is a trustee and ex-president of Maharashtra Seva Sangh, a 84 years old organization. He is a president of Sanskrit Bharati Konkan region. He is a director, ex-chairman of Jan Kalyan's Sahakari Bank Limited. He is a member of Board of Studies of Subject of Sanskrit in KJ Somaya College. He held many responsible positions in many organizations. He has received Yoga Mitra Award from Yoga Bharati, Yoga Vidya Niket, Navi Mumbai. He has also received the Best Social Worker Award from Senior Citizen Association Mulan. He has also received Jal Dastur Award from Best Features of DCA Journal. With these words, I request members to give a thumbs up to Mr. Vaze.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Suresh ji. Over to you, sir. Waji sir, please.
Yes, I'll first share the PPT.
Achha, whether okay, I will share, no, sir. 1 second.
No, I'll do it.
Yeah, please share, sir.
Yes.
क्या गिरा रे?
Yes, sir. It's visible now.
Yes.
You can enlarge the yes, sir.
Okay.
Now it's okay. Perfect.
Namaskar and good morning to all of you. Mr. Sandeep Savaria ji, who coordinated with me with the convener of your Kolkata Central Study Circle. Then my friend and co-speaker and the Central Council member, Honorable Mr. Ranjit Agarwal, who set the tune of this morning's session. Mr. Suresh Junjunwala, who introduced me in very kind and generous words. And friends of Kolkata Study Circle. Again, a very good morning to you. The topic, Code of Ethics. In fact, I must compliment Ranjit ji for very briefly, but at the same time, quite comprehensively summarizing the basic issues, the important issues of Code of Ethics, an overview of that which was given by him so excellently. Well, friends, code of ethics sounds to be a very philosophical subject. And perhaps sometimes people feel that it will be something like a pravachan or some sermon. And in my introduction, they said that I speak on Ramayana, Mahabharata, and our ancient scriptures. But don't worry, I will not be boring you by this theoretical aspect. As Ranjit ji mentioned, that I had an occasion to handle quite a number of cases, perhaps it is nearing 300 of the disciplinary committee, and that experience I share with you. So it will be as lively and interesting as any other subject. Rather, it will be more lively and interesting because it is directly connected with our day-to-day practice. So let me go on to the PPT, because many people are under an impression that this is a burden on us. First and foremost thing I must mention here that the new code of ethics, as Ranjit ji rightly mentioned, is becoming now effective from 1st of April 2022. But I'll be basically dealing with the disciplinary mechanism and the case studies and also certain principles of code of ethics. But this new code of ethics, the principles out of which have been deferred, or rather earlier were deferred due to COVID pandemic, will now be effective. But I'll be dealing with the fundamental aspects of code of ethics and the disciplinary mechanism with the help of examples, because I believe that examples is the only way of teaching. They say example is not the best way of teaching, but it is the only way of teaching. So unless we know examples through the case studies, it will be difficult to understand the subject. Let me come to the very first philosophical thing is that what is our motto, friends? Ya esha supteshu jagarti. That means he who is awake when the entire world around is asleep. This was suggested, which was from Kathopanishad, and it was suggested by Maharishi Aurobindo to our institute. And the chartered accountant is compared there with ultimate truth, that is the Brahman or the Atman. So that is what the society expects from us. Many people believe that this is only a burden or this is something like a very unwelcome thing which is thrust on us. Dunya kuch bhi karti hai, they have no scruples, they have no ethics. Doctors have no ethics, lawyers have no ethics, nobody has ethics, businessmen also do not have ethics. Then why only chartered accountants are burdened with this? So many people say that let the world behave properly, then only we will start behaving properly. And friends, this question was put to Swami Vivekananda. And he said that if you say like this, it is like standing on one bank of the river and saying that I will cross the river only when the entire water flows away. So you can't do that. That means, because remember, chartered accountants are the financial police. They are basically the caretakers of the conscience, the financial discipline, and they are intellectual leaders. So they cannot say that we will follow the word. They have to make certain benchmarks. They have to make certain standards of behavior which the society should follow. So remember that this our basic framework, our mindset should be very positive about the code of ethics, because it has many aspects. Code of ethics is in fact, it is meant for our protection. It is a shield that guides us, that protects us. Because if there are any errors or even the blunders, but if you can prove that by your working papers, by your other behavior, that there was no negligence on your part. See, to err is human. The errors are bound to occur. The mistakes, you cannot avoid mistakes, because if the person who works always commits mistakes. Mistakes is not negligence. Mistakes is not misconduct. What is misconduct is your negligence, your gross negligence, or your lack of due diligence. So you should be constantly awake. That is the message. That awakening is important. In fact, as you know, it is nothing but the moral values. And code of ethics is not only the philosophical part, but very, very practical for our day-to-day life. Remember that eternal vigilance is the cost of independence. अखंड सावधानता ये स्वतंत्रता की कीमत है. इसका मतलब है कि just as for our independence of our country, our soldiers, our warriors are there constantly awake on the borders of our country. Same way, to protect the profession, to protect the financial discipline in the society, chartered accountants are expected to behave in eternal vigilance, akhanda savadhanata. In fact, my first principle and message to all the professional community is that basically you are either ethical or unethical. There is no in-between stage. One cannot say that, oh, by and large, I am ethical. That means that you are not ethical or you compromise on ethics whenever the situation arises. The first principle I would say is that, in fact, if there are any complaints, when I deal with the disciplinary mechanism, you will come to know that when there are any complaints, our institute or the council or the disciplinary committee do not focus more on errors or mistakes. They say, what is your attitude? Whether your attitude is a professional attitude, whether your attitude is a attitude which is not unbecoming of a professional, whether it brings disrepute to the profession. So you are vigilant enough, you are technically qualified, you are technically competent, and you are also doing it diligently. In fact, I mentioned about the soldiers and the warriors. You have this National Defense Academy. And National Defense Academy, there are 3 messages which are inscribed there, which are given for our soldiers. Be physically fit, mentally awakened, and morally straight. Now that is the foundation of our profession as well. So to ensure the credibility, because why we should be ethical? Because our profession is based on our credibility. हमारी जो विश्वासार्हता है समाज में, उसके ऊपर हमारा प्रोफेशन पूरी तरह से निर्भर है. तो अगर our credibility is lost, that is the very foundation is lost, then our profession has no existence at all. And moreover, remember that the society expects that our code of ethics should be very strictly enforced. The society expects, in fact, society complains, people at large complain that our institute is very lenient to the members. They say that you take unduly long time in disposing of the complaints. And they also complain that the punishments awarded by you to the members are very mild. So that means the society very much expects that the code of ethics should be very strictly enforced. In fact, that is why more and more regulations are there to ensure that our code of ethics is enforced very strictly. What are the sources of code of ethics? This is a little philosophical, but this is perhaps the last slide of this basic philosophy. See, ethics are as old as the human civilization. And there are 3 fundamental principles. In fact, in our Taittiriya Upanishad, there used to be 3 messages which the gurus or the sages used to give to their pupils, the students, after they complete their education. And what were the messages? Satyam Vada. Satyam Vada means speak the truth. Hamesha sach boliye. This Satyam is not that Satyam corporation. It is Satyam Vada. Then Dharmam Chara. What is Dharmam? Dharmam is your duty. Dharma is not religion. Dharma is not basically a way of worshipping. Puja, upasana, ye dharma nahi hai. Dharma is your duty. So discharge your duty religiously. And the third most important principle, which is again very relevant in today's time as well, is Swadhyayat ma pramadaha. That means do not commit any default in your continuous study. So once you qualify as a CA, in fact, we forget everything about code of ethics, because just because it is that paper is there in our final CA exam, we study a little bit about code of ethics. But it is a matter of continuous study, and even our taxation, company law, and all other matters need to be upgraded and updated. And that is why Swadhyayat ma pramada, and that is nothing but our continuing professional education, CPE hours. So CPE hours were contemplated by our ancient sages thousands of years ago. So code of ethics is nothing but the elaboration of these principles. Now I'll come to the very practical aspects, very, very practical aspects, friends. Please remember that in your profession, you should never ever do anything in absolutely good faith. You have to eliminate that concept of good faith from your mind altogether. If you commit anything in good faith, you are sure to invite trouble for yourselves. And I'll give you 2 or 3 very concrete examples. These are the stories that I share. And from those stories, there are a lot of things to learn. So the first and foremost case I always start my lecture with is that there were husband and wife, both were chartered accountants. Wife did the audit of a particular cooperative society for about 3 years. Then there is a concept of rotation in the cooperative sector, which was introduced recently in the corporate sector. So in the next 3 years, the husband did the audit. They were not practicing as partners, but they were practicing as independent proprietors. Now, unfortunately, the 8th or 9th year, there was a divorce petition between the two, and the wife filed a complaint against the husband, ex-husband now, saying that he did not obtain her NOC. He did not communicate with her while accepting that audit. So to that extent, now this Kali Yuga has taken us to. In fact, you are in Kali Yuga and therefore no relationships are permanent. Remember, no relationships are permanent. In fact, almost 90% of the cases arise due to some dispute or the other, not only among clients or other people, but among brothers, among father and son, among sisters, among husband and wife, among the students and the principal. Therefore, friends, that no relationships are now permanent, and therefore you should always be very, very vigilant in making records of what you are saying, what you are talking, what you are discussing. Minuting, recording is very, very important. In fact, I must compliment our committee on members in practice that they have started a course on working paper management, because unless you note something what you have done, it has no value. The work should not only be done, but it should be seen that it is done. You should be able to show that, yes, I have worked. You should be able to show that, yes, these are my papers on which I have worked. So credibility and the responsibility is diminishing. What is the present image of the profession? Unfortunately, our credibility is diminishing. लोग क्या बोलते हैं, अरे ये ना तो सीए किसी सीए को पकड़ के करवा देना काम. That means our value in the society is diminishing. It is reduced. And basically, we are not very assertive. We have not been able to say no to anyone. हम जब सभी जगह हाँ हाँ कहते हैं और सभी काम हम कर डालते हैं क्लाइंट को, और क्लाइंट का एक ऐसा इंप्रेशन है कि सीएज आर द पीपल हु मैनेज एवरीथिंग. काम नहीं होने वाला हो, इरेगुलर हो, इलीगल हो, वो भी सीए करवा के देते हैं. So this is our profession, unfortunately, in the society, and that perception has to be eliminated very, very I would say very consciously by us, by making a lot of efforts. So we should be assertive. We should not be accommodative. We are too much accommodative. Client को जो चाहिए हम करा के देते हैं. जैसा उसको कपड़ा चाहिए वैसा हम टेलर मेड कपड़ा उसको बैलेंस शीट बना के देते हैं. In fact, friends, it is a very disturbing fact that I can share with you that in one organization there was a checklist for issuing certain certificates, and there the footnote was like this: please avoid bringing CA certificates since the same are often found unreliable. So this is the perception of the society. They believe that the society CAs can give any kind of certificate. So because we do work too much on good faith. Now I'll share with you another case study. Another basic fact is that there was a chartered accountant who had a proprietary client for doing his tax audit. Once that proprietor's daughter comes to the office of the CA and she says कि मुझे मेरे husband और मेरे mother-in-law का income tax return certify करके चाहिए. So she wanted that, and the chartered accountant asked her, and she said it was required for some loan purpose or visa purpose, whatever. Then that chartered accountant had not filed those returns. So it was filed by some other chartered accountant, but that lady had brought the evidence. So she gave that, the chartered accountant verified the factual thing on his computer, took out the printout, satisfied himself that it was a proper one, and then he put his signature as a true copy by adopting the proper guidelines of the institute. Yeah, just as Ranjitji mentioned, that while certifying now there are specific guidelines of the institute as how you should certify. Even for provisional balance sheet, even for prospective or the progressive or project report, how you should sign. In fact, there is an essay 3400 and essay 4410 that gives guideline on these matters. But even for certification as true copy or attestation, there are guidelines issued by our institute, and he followed them. But unfortunately, friends, he received a complaint from the husband of that lady saying that मेरे रिटर्न अथॉरिटी के बगैर आपने मेरे वाइफ को मेरा इनकम टैक्स रिटर्न क्यों दिया? Why did you part with my ITR without my written authority to my wife. इसका मतलब था क्योंकि वाइफ ने हस्बैंड के अगेंस्ट had filed a complaint of domestic violence in the court of law. That means even the husband-wife relations you cannot take for granted. And this is the root cause of all our disciplinary cases. In fact, human trust is lost. The mutual trust between the human beings is lost. आपस में विश्वास अभी आप नहीं है, इसलिए many people keep on quarreling, disputes. Any two persons keep on disputing always, and particularly in business, the disputes are bound to arise. Without dispute, there cannot be any professional or commercial relationship. In fact, there are many cases which will follow, but two important principles you should always keep in mind. As I mentioned earlier, I repeat, work should not only be done, but it should be seen that it is done. And the faintest of ink is stronger than the strongest of memories. The faintest of ink is stronger than the strongest of memories. That means you should make a record. Many chartered accountants say, we called this client 100 times. We sent messages 1,000 times, but he is not responding. The only solution is that write to him. Write to him, and there are so many technological gadgets now available for communication. Your email is there, your WhatsApp is there. Write to him one small note and then see the response. But we believe more on oral communication. उसका phone लगता ही नहीं है, phone किया तो भी वो उठाता नहीं है, phone पे response नहीं देता है. So these are our usual complaints. But then write to him. See, previously when this technology was not there, our chartered accountant used to feel afraid and shy for getting the acknowledgement of the client or writing to him. But now by email, you can establish that you had communicated. So this is the habit that we should develop. We are not proactive, friends. We should start our work well in time, which we are not doing. We are always 11th hour. That means जब काम खत्म होने का टाइम आता है डेडलाइन का, that time we start, we wake up. We should start well in time. If you start well in time, you reach properly at your destination. And then the client also do not get opportunity कि आप मुझे 15 महीने के पहले का क्वेरी अभी आज पूछ रहे हो. Be online, be proactive, start your work right in earnest. Then we have obsession with tax considerations. Principles of accounting and auditing are sidelined. And I'll give you a very excellent example of this. Nothing should be done in good faith. In fact, friends, I must mention here that usually I require 3 to 4 hours minimum to deal with the principles of code of ethics. Here I have about 1.5 hours. I try to do justice. That's why I'm perhaps a little speedy. मेरा थोड़ा बोलने का स्पीड शायद ज्यादा रहेगा क्योंकि I have to cover so many things in that 1.5 hours duration. But I try to do justice to this. Now, obsession with tax consideration. Now, friends, there was a very interesting case which I dealt with. There was a private limited company. There were only 2 shareholders. Both were brothers of each other. Elder brother was the chairman who had 60% shares, and the younger brother who was another director, he had 40% shares. Now, when this particular date of tax returns was approaching, the younger brother is coming to the office of the chartered accountant. Remember, this chartered accountant is the firm which is 75-year-old, very reputed firm. And this company's audit the firm was doing for last 25 years. There was such a long relationship. And still, what happened unfortunately was that this younger brother came and he requested that since now only 4 or 5 days are remaining for the filing of return. So what I will do is, I'll take you give me the printouts of the balance sheet. I'll go, I'll obtain the signature of my brother. I'll bring it and then you submit the return. So in good faith, the chartered accountant signed the balance sheet. The director took it. He obtained the signature of the elder brother, but remember, he never put his own signature. This is very, very crucial, friends. And the return was filed. As soon as the return was filed, he filed a complaint to the institute. And what was the complaint? There were 2 grounds, and which are really nightmarish, friends. You will feel afraid कि क्या हम करते हैं, रोज करते हैं, and same thing in good faith people do and get troubled. So what were the points of complaint? He said that for a company, 2 directors' signature is required. Whereas here only one director had signed and the auditor had put his signature, which is a misconduct. Both the directors have not signed. Now here also, friends, I must clarify one very fundamental misconception among the minds of many people. People believe that when the two directors or the three directors, as the case may be, have signed the balance sheet, then that's the end of the story, which is not so. Actually, what is more relevant is that the section says, relevant section says, earlier it was section 215 under the 1956 Act. It said that because this case was under the old act, but the new act carries the same section, that the balance sheet or the financial statement should be first approved in the board meeting. This is more important. They should be approved, and after the approval, the directors or the board authorizes two of them or three of them to sign on its behalf. What is of utmost and the fundamental relevance is approval in the board meeting. So we people, friends, we chartered accountants, we prepare everything for the client, practically everything. We only prepare the final accounts, we only make it a presentation, we only draft the director's report, we only prepare the MRL, everything we do. But still we are careless about obtaining just one small piece of paper. Let it be a stereotype paper, let it be a stereotype letter saying that these accounts were approved in the board meeting held on such and such date. This is the simple thing that protects you. Otherwise, even if directors have signed, it has no value unless it has been approved in the board. Now, in this particular case, there were only two directors, it's a different story. But assume that there are 7 or 8 directors. And remember, more than 90% cases arise out of the dispute, because usually what happens is, out of these 6-7 directors, only one director deals with you, usually. Other directors are either not interested in the accounts, or not, they are technocrats, or they are dormant, they are not active. And when there are disputes among them, they always make the chartered accountant as scapegoat. And they say, कि उसको बलि का बकरा बना देते हैं चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट को. Why? They want to exert pressure against the other party and they disown everything. They say balance sheet हमें बताया ही नहीं कभी. We don't know anything about this balance sheet. We were never shown. Minutes were never written. Meetings were never held. There was no attendance recorded. Remember, friends, secretarial record is of utmost importance in our profession, and we are very much lacking in that. We do not verify the secretarial record, the minutes, the attendance, the notice. Everything should be properly verified, because otherwise, whenever there are disputes, people simply हाथ ऊपर करते हैं कि हमें कुछ मालूम नहीं, और हमारा ये जो डायरेक्टर है who was interacting with the chartered accountant, उन्होंने कुछ ना कुछ collusion किया होगा, conspiracy किया होगा. They are having hand in gloves with each other, and therefore we disown these accounts. This is a very, very common mode of complaint. So, and there is lack of communication skills. We do not have proper communication skills. In fact, our entire life depends on the communication. Our entire life, our success, everything depends on our communications. We should be smart communicators. We should be able to tell what we want to tell clearly and in time. You should not be too late. So you should communicate in time, appropriately, in proper words. So these communication skills are also very important. In fact, friends, there were cases where the audit was done, because earlier there was a lot of backdating. Now UDIN has been introduced. Therefore, now backdating is not, rather to some extent, controlled. But earlier, people had signed the balance sheets and there were emails sent to the clients for the queries, which clearly indicated that the accounts were not completed. Let me come back to this story of directors. So this was the first complaint. What was that complaint? That only 2 directors had signed. And another complaint, which is again a very eye-opener, I should say, an eye-opener to all of us. Because, and I leave everything to the introspection of the audience, whether we are observing these things. He said that one of the cars of the company was registered only in the name of that other director, the elder brother, and it was not registered in the name of the company. Now our people, chartered accountants, will come forward arguing, तो क्या हुआ? एक की डायरेक्टर के नाम पे तो क्या हुआ? Depreciation is allowed under Income Tax Act. That is why I say that we have too much obsession with the tax considerations. We say that tax को अगर accept होता है तो फिर कोई बात नहीं. then company law वगैरह सब is of secondary. Accounting principles are secondary. But friends, when we are certifying that these are the assets and liabilities of an entity, it is our basic duty to ensure that these assets are really standing in the name of that company. And therefore, in fact, unfortunately, I have come across many chartered accountants signing the balance sheet just on the basis of financial records like ledger. They don't look for the agreements. They don't look for the minutes. They don't look for the practical sanction letters of the banks or anything, or the capitalization mode. Nothing they verify. They just go by the financial records and complete the balance sheet just on the trial balance extracted from the financial records, which is very, very dangerous, friends. You should not ever do this. You should go for the basic document, like if it is a purchase of office, then who had paid the stamp duty, how it was paid, when it was paid, whether it is to be capitalized, whether it was taken from the loan, whether the interest is capitalized, then whether it has become operational, whether a factory has become operational, whether the machinery has been properly erected, so many questions, whether the electrical power connection has come or not, that also you have to verify, because there are many tax deductions which are allowed when after the date of commencement of the business. So if the power itself is not allowed, how could you commence the business? So many aspects which you have to see beyond the ledger, beyond the financial records. So that we have to be very clear and we have to be very vigilant on that. Now you will wonder, you will ask me, because what I am sharing with you is what is transpiring behind the curtain. Because if whatever cases are reported by our institute, what happens is, if I give these facts, then you will also come to a conclusion that yes, it is a misconduct because only one director had signed, or this he had not verified the car whether it was registered in the name of the company. So you will wonder that yes, it is correct. But remember, you will ask why this director who had 25 years of friendship with the firm filed a complaint for such petty matters, for such small grounds. Why he filed a complaint? Obviously, one reason was that he was having a dispute with his brother. That is the first thing. दो ब्रदर अगर बिजनेस में साथ में, तो उनके झगड़े होने वाले ही है. That he had to take it from me. So that is one. Though friends hai, I'll deal with another interesting case now. But you will wonder why he filed a complaint, and that is more interesting. This director had come to the firm a few months ago requesting the partner to accommodate his daughter as a dummy article. When the firm had refused, firm said, no, we are disciplined. We are having a proper system. We won't allow the dummy articleship. And he took revenge. उसका वेंजेंस लेने के लिए इसने फाइल किया था कंप्लेंट, वो खुन्नस निकालने के लिए किया था. सो रिमेंबर दैट यू कैन नॉट अफोर्ड टू एंटागोनाइज एनीवन. In fact, very easy. Our profession is so vulnerable कि कोई भी पत्थर उठा के हमें अगर हमारे सर पर फेंकता है ना, तो we are demolished. Every day we are committing some misconduct or the other. एक आध बार जब कंप्लेंट आता है, तो many people say, last 30 years I have an unblemished career and there was no complaint against me. The council says you consider yourself as lucky that there was no complaint against you, because every day we commit some misconduct or the other, because we act in good faith. ये गुड फेथ का मामला इतना गंभीर है, इतना सीरियस है कि एक चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट ने दूसरे टैक्स फर्म का टैक्स ऑडिट साइन किया था एज ए फ्रेंड without much verification, and that other firm had the total collection of fees of 3 crores in the year 2002. And what happened? The cash book was seen by the income tax officer for scrutiny, and it was found that on one particular day, there was a cash negative balance of just 400 rupees, friends. 3 crores rupees collection and the cash negative in the accounts was only 400 rupees. Because despite all the gadgetry, tally package, this package, that package, this particular aspect was not seen at all. That means you should train your people properly. Training of staff, training of articles is of utmost importance. Ultimately, how you are going to render the service. How are you going to work? You are going to work on the basis of your staff. You are going to work on the basis of your articles. So training them is very important. Otherwise, हम क्या हमेशा बोलते हैं, अरे ये articles सब useless लोग रहते हैं. They are concerned only with their exams, their coaching classes. They काम नहीं करते हैं बराबर. This is our usual grumbling. Now I'll deal with you, rather share with you another case which was very again nightmarish. तो कोई भी complaint कर सकता है, कोई भी complaint कर सकता है, and I'll deal with you, rather deal with those aspects as to how these are the suggested reading. I'm shared this PPT so that later on, and as Ranjit rightly mentioned, there are two schedules. I'll come back to the disciplinary mechanism, and in the course of that, I'll share with many interesting and more eye-opening cases. So as Ranjit rightly mentioned, it was first 19 items of misconduct are covered in Schedule 1. Schedule 1 is the one where only our professional brothers are affected. Outsiders is not affected. Therefore, they are considered as of lesser seriousness, lesser gravity. Second schedule items are more serious because other outsider is affected. Now, provisions relating to misconduct, the authorities. Who are the authorities? Because these are all interdependent and interlinked provisions. I cannot deal with any provision in isolation. They are all linked together. So there are four authorities. Who are the authorities? One is disciplinary directorate. That means disciplinary director who is the head of this particular. These are all bureaucrats. They are the employees of the government, and they are basically qualified as chartered accountants, lawyers, all they are qualified. But your complaint is basically filed before the disciplinary directorate. They are the first one who entertain the complaint, and they decide whether, I'll come to the discipline, but they decide whether there is a prima facie misconduct. Sakrit Darshani, Pratham Darshani misconduct hai ya nahi, that they decide. Because otherwise there could be jhute complaints, there could be frivolous complaints. So all that they verify whether there is some truth in the complaint. This is the role of disciplinary directorate. How they do it, I'll deal with later. Then the first schedule offense, they are dealt with by Board of Discipline. Board of Discipline, because हम loosely बोलते हैं पूरा disciplinary committee. No, Board of Discipline deals with the first schedule cases. How they deal with it, I will come to later. Then disciplinary committee deals with the second schedule offenses. Obviously, when there is a mix of first and second schedule, then obviously it comes to the disciplinary committee. Then the last authority is appellate authority, which is constituted under the Act itself. So these are the four authorities. Recapitulating: disciplinary directorate, Board of Discipline, disciplinary committee, and appellate authority. These are the four authorities under the Act. Then there are important pronouncements which are binding, as Ranjitji also mentioned: accounting standards, standards on auditing, statement of accounts, vagare. Now I'll deal with some more stories about the disciplinary cases when we come to disciplinary mechanism authority. Now, who are the authorities? Now, Board of Discipline is constituted as there is an eminent person who is presiding over, usually is our president or vice president, and one member of the Central Council and one government nominee. This is the constitution of the Board of Discipline. Disciplinary committee, there are 5 members. In BOD, there are only 3 members. So disciplinary committee, 5 members. Who are they? President or vice president? Because now there are 3 benches, because there is so much of pendency. So many cases are pending that our institute had appointed 3 benches to deal with the disciplinary cases, because the government has pressurized them to dispose of the cases very fast, because perhaps the government wants to have more interference perhaps in the disciplinary mechanism. So the first is president or vice president, then 2 Central Council members and 2 government nominees. This is the disciplinary committee. And then what is the appellate authority? Appellate authority is again the High Court. It is presided over by a High Court judge. High Court judge, either a sitting judge or a retired judge. And second is there are 2 ex-Central Council members. But how they should be? They have completed at least 1 full term of their office. Say whatever 3 years term is there, that they should have completed. So 2 ex-Central Council members and 2 government nominees. So this is the constitution of the appellate authority. Now I am coming to the very, very important aspect of our disciplinary committee, our disciplinary mechanism. Basic principles that have evolved in the disciplinary mechanism. The first is that the misconduct proceedings can be commenced either on complaint or on information. That means somebody files a complaint कि ये CA ने फलाने CA ने कुछ ये काम ठीक नहीं किया or he has misbehaved or whatever. Now this is the starting point. The complaint is filed, but sometimes they don't file a complaint, but they just pass on an information. Information कभी कभी प्रेस में आता है, चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट हेल्ड फॉर ब्राइबरी, चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट हेल्ड फॉर मिसकंडक्ट वगैरह वगैरह. So that news item also can be picked up by the institute to comments on the information. Sometimes these regulators usually just pass on the information to the institute. For example, the MCA, Registrar of Companies Office, or Income Tax Department, or GST Department, or SEBI, or Reserve Bank, or many other cooperative registrar, they just pass on the information to the institute if they come across some irregularity committed by the CA. But they don't file a complaint. Now, what is the difference between complaint and information? In the complaint case, the complainant is there throughout the proceedings. That means hearing tak, end result aane tak, complainant is there in the picture, he is involved. Whereas in information case, the counsel first informs the informant who has passed the information that whether you want to file a complaint or you just want to only make any confirmation. Because once you are in the information only, then they have no role to play in the proceeding. Then the institute deals with that information, and final only end result is informed to them. For example, if the registrar of companies has passed on the information, he has not filed a complaint. Then if he doesn't want to file a complaint, then the institute only informs him the end result of the inquiry. But in between, he is not informed. In between, he has no role to play. So this is the difference between complaint and information. Then there can be a suo motu action. Suo motu action means on its own. They get some information which is very, very crucial. They verify it and then initiate the proceeding. So this is another way. Now, for example, there was one chartered accountant who was involved in that 1993 bomb blast case. He was a chartered accountant. So when such thing happens, then the institute can take a suo motu action. That means on its own, on reading the paper or the news item, and they can start the proceeding. So this is complaint and information. Another very important aspect, friends, very, very important. When somebody files a complaint against other person and he is seeking justice, कि मुझे न्याय चाहिए, so he has to come with clean hands. Agar he himself is guilty, so how can he file a complaint against other? This principle does not apply to our disciplinary cases. Remember this. So even if the complainant is a criminal person, even if he is a fraudulent person, even if he is in jail, even if he is convicted, still he can file a complaint. Because our institute's role is what? They say we are not concerned with the complainant's conduct. Complainant कैसा आदमी है हमें कुछ लेना देना नहीं. हमारा चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट मेंबर जो है उसने काम बराबर किया है कि नहीं, that is what we are concerned with. So whether our member has done the job correctly, this is our only concern. So even if the complainant is a criminal person, we are not bothered. So this is the very, very important thing. Because क्या होता है normally, when a complaint is received, our chartered accountants who are the respondents, they try to counter attack the complainant. अरे ये complainant ही बदमाश आदमी है, ये complainant ऐसा है वैसा है, he is behind the bars वगैरह वगैरह. But in council says this is not, we are not concerned with that. You tell us whether you have done the job correctly. So this is another. In fact, now one very interesting case law has recently come High Court. The question arose whether chartered accountant's misconduct should be considered only when he is acting as a chartered accountant or when he is acting in any capacity. For example, a chartered accountant misbehaves with a lady. Now the question is whether he does it in his own office or in his client's office or in a CA conference where he is present there as a chartered accountant. He is not present there as a lay person. But question is whether he has done such a thing when he is attending some wedding function, he is attending some traveling abroad. In that process, he did some misconduct. Whether still he is liable for misconduct, and the court said yes, a chartered accountant should behave in a clean manner everywhere, whether he is there as a chartered accountant or not. For example, if I am attending some private function, even then I must maintain the dignity of my profession. I must maintain the standards of behavior in my profession. Because why? Because newspaper में क्या आता है? Chartered accountant held for misbehaving with a lady. Chartered accountant held for bribery. Chartered accountant held for such corruption. You know, that is why it brings bad publicity to the profession. So it is a disrepute to the profession. Once it is a disrepute to the profession, the entire profession suffers. Our council's aim and objective is that to maintain the credibility and the reputation of the profession. Because if the profession is respected, then only we have work. Otherwise, किसी का अगर हमारे ऊपर विश्वास नहीं है तो हमें काम कैसे मिलेगा? So our विश्वासार्हता, credibility is of utmost importance, and the council tries to protect that. Therefore, wherever you are, chartered accountant should behave properly. This is the message. Then withdrawal of complaint. Withdrawal of complaint, earlier it was not allowed, but now it is allowed with the permission of the Board of Discipline or the Disciplinary Committee. Then council has jurisdiction only on individual member and not on the firm. For example, if the complaint is filed against a firm that the firm did not audit it correctly, then what will happen? The institute will write to the firm and they will ask कि आपके firm के against there is a complaint. You let us know who is the person responsible for this. Who in your firm, who is the person who is answerable? And then the firm informs them that he is the person who has signed the balance sheet or who helped him signing the balance sheet, and then proceedings are taken up against that member. Then, but it is not against the firm. Whereas NFRA, National Financial Review Authority, which is constituted by the government, has the jurisdiction on the firm also. Now, complaint is filed. See, our chartered accountants are obsessed with the time-barring concept. Like this in the taxation, we have 6 years, 3 years, 10 years as different cases. Here also, there is a loose way of time barring. And what is that loose way of time barring? If the complaint is filed beyond 7 years from the date of the event complained against, for example, signing of balance sheet, 31st March balance sheet, 21 balance sheet I signed somewhere in September or October. From that date, 7 years. So not from 31st March, but from the date of my signing, because the complaint is against my signing the balance sheet. So if it is, then normally within 7 years, it should be filed. But it is not a blanket or a foolproof or a clear time barring. They say that if the evidence is very clear and there is no difficulty in getting the evidence, then 7 kya 10, 12 saal ke baad bhi you can file a complaint because it is very clear. So remember that there was a very interesting case. There was a lady who had prepared her will. मृत्यु पत्र बनाया था. So that will, she died after about 10 to 12 years after she made the will. That after the death of that lady, when that will was opened, which was sealed, which was opened, it was found that the chartered accountant had signed as a witness, but the lady had not signed it at all. The testator had not signed it at all. This is a clear evidence of negligence or misconduct. Why? Because when you are signing as a witness, what you are making a statement is that that person has signed in my presence. So it is very serious, friends. What we do is we take it very lightly. We take it very casually. अरे आपका witness है ना, मैं करता हूँ सही signature. That is not proper unless he signs. Whereas when we sign the balance sheet, it is not as a witness. Remember, the directors need not sign in our presence. They have signed, but we are verifying it and we are putting our signature. So that is there we are not witnesses. Those dates can be different. The directors have signed on a particular date and we can sign on a later date also. Whereas when you are signing as a witness, there should be date should be normally matched, and unless that person is signing, you cannot say that you are a witness. So remember, this is very, very serious. Then even a respondent, this is another principle, that even if the respondent compensates the complainant, for example, the complaint is filed that मुझे इसने tax का गलत advice दिया, wrong advice, because of which I had to pay interest, penalty, taxes, and so many things. If the chartered accountant goes to the complainant and says कि अरे मेरे कारण आपका बहुत नुकसान हुआ, take this compensation, I'll pay everything. Still, you cannot undo what you have done. जो आपने किया है वो उसका आप कैंसिल नहीं कर सकते. That means your misconduct is completed. So even if you compensate, you are not excused from the disciplinary cases because your indiscipline तो हो ही गया, misconduct तो हो ही गया. इसका मतलब है कि you should be very vigilant while giving that advice in the proper stage itself. That is why I say कि you should be always vigilant. You should be always awake. आप नींद में नहीं रह सकते ऑफिस में या किधर भी. You should not. That is why your एष सुप्तेषु जागर्ति. You should be constantly awake. Now, compensation or secondly, sometimes people say मैंने गलती किया लेकिन उसका किसी को नुकसान नहीं हुआ. For example, I signed a balance sheet. I'll give you 2 examples of this. That nobody is aggrieved. For example, मैंने balance sheet I signed. On that basis, the bank had given loan to my client. That loan was properly repaid. Interest was paid fully. No, bank is not aggrieved at all. But there is an error in my balance sheet. मेरा balance sheet तो गलत था. Now, if the banker notices that the balance sheet signed is incorrect, अगर आपका बैंक से कुछ पंगा बढ़ जाता है बाद में, तो banker can always file a complaint or an information to the institute, and you cannot say कि I had signed the balance sheet wrongly, लेकिन बैंक का किधर क्या नुकसान हुआ है? Their loan immediately they have received back. This defense is not accepted. They say आपका गलती हो ही गया है. That means whether anybody is affected or not, immaterial. Secondly, suppose another case I'll give you. The charitable trust है. पूरा income is exempt. Now if it is income is exempt, we have filed the income tax return. Everything is assessed properly. There is no tax. Government का कुछ भी नुकसान नहीं है. फिर भी if the income tax officer notices that the balance sheet is wrong, he can still file a complaint saying that balance sheet is wrongly signed. Tax का नुकसान नहीं हुआ है, tax का किधर evasion नहीं हुआ है, but still he can file a complaint. So remember these 2 very, very important aspects of our discipline. In short, I am repeating and hammering that आपका काम perfect ही होना चाहिए. You cannot have any other excuses. You cannot have excuses. मैंने नहीं किया था, मैं बीमार था, मेरा स्टाफ नहीं था. This is not accepted. So remember, and there is unfortunately there is no strict time barring for the completing of the assessment or the completing of the proceedings. Now, broad procedure. This is the disciplinary mechanism which I am dealing with. Now, what is the procedure? First, a complaint is filed. Complaint is filed in form number I, form I. And this is a very short form. Five aspects are there. Name of the complainant, name of the respondent, then the address, then what is your grievance, कि इसने क्या गलती किया, that you have to narrate. And you have to also mention कि who is aware of all these things, who are the persons who know all these things, who are basically aware of the whatever matter has taken place. So these are the only 5 items, and the complaint has to be filed, and there is a fee of 2,500 rupees which has to pay, plus GST, of course. So 2,500 plus GST is the fee that you have to pay. Then what happens is the complaint is forwarded to the respondent. Complaint is forwarded to the respondent. Yeah, this is the complaint received. It is not processed. Remember, it is not processed. It is just forwarded to the government. Of course, they see basic things like fee nahi bhara hai वगैरह, so that of course they will do. But content as such they don't see. So they just pass on to the respondent. Then the respondent is given 21 days time to write his explanation, which is called written statement. So written statement is the explanation which is the respondent is giving. Jiske against complaint hai is the respondent. So he is giving that explanation. But our chartered accountants are always, as I told you, they are not proactive. Time पे काम शुरू नहीं करते हैं, time पे काम खत्म भी नहीं करते हैं. So we always need additional time. We always ask for extension. So fortunately, only 30 days extension can be given by the Board of Discipline or by the Disciplinary Directorate. Beyond that, you cannot get the extension. Now, 30 days when you have to file your written statement. Written statement should be written in a very objective manner. It should not be emotional. It should not be sentimental. It should not be counter attack on the complainant. Ki complaint hi badmash hai, complainant. This will not protect you. You say that yes, I have done the work properly. Remember that कोई भी affect हुआ नहीं है. इसका another example I'll give you. Suppose the doctors, we complain against the doctors, consumer में जो complain करते हैं कि ये डॉक्टर्स ये हमें अननेसेसरीली टेस्ट करवाते हैं, डायग्नोसिस करवाते हैं, रिपोर्ट्स करवाते हैं अननेसेसरीली और हमारा खर्चा बढ़ता है. दिस इज आवर कंप्लेंट यूजुअली अगेंस्ट द डॉक्टर्स. बट रिमेंबर दैट दे हैव टू फॉलो ए पर्टिकुलर प्रोसीजर. फॉर एग्जांपल, एक डॉक्टर गिव्स यू ए मेडिसिन व्हिच इज प्रॉपर, but he has not followed the procedure of proper blood tests or proper x-rays and all, then even if he has given you the correct treatment, perhaps under the medical terms there could be a misconduct on his behalf, because there is a rule that you should follow these systems. अगर वो system से deviate हो जाता है तो it could be a misconduct. Take the other way around. डायरेक्टर ने आपको गलत एडवाइस, डॉक्टर ने आपको गलत मेडिसिन दिया and you are not affected at all. में आपका स्ट्रेंथ इतना है कि यू आर नॉट अफेक्टेड, सो उसको आपको कुछ भी बीमारी नहीं हुई, आपको कुछ भी नुकसान नहीं हुआ हेल्थ को, स्टिल इट इज ए मिसकंडक्ट. आई गेव यू द एग्जांपल ऑफ वेदर एनीबडी इज एग्रीड और नॉट इज इमटेरियल. किसी का नुकसान हुआ है कि नहीं इज इमटेरियल. सेम वे अगर डॉक्टर ने, इफ यू कैन प्रूव दैट ही हैज गिवन मी रॉन्ग मेडिसिन, ही हैज गिवन मी रॉन्ग इंजेक्शन, भले आपको कुछ हुआ नहीं उसका नुकसान, फिर भी इट इज ए मिसकंडक्ट. सो सेम वे आई एम गिविंग यू दिस पैरेलल्स सो दैट इन द सेम वे आवर चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट शुड डू देयर जॉब परफेक्टली. सो दिस इज रिटर्न स्टेटमेंट. व्हाटएवर रिटर्न स्टेटमेंट और एक्सप्लेनेशन यू फाइल, इट इज फॉरवर्डेड टू द कंप्लेनेंट. कंप्लेनेंट को ऐसा कहा जाता है कि देखो आपका कंप्लेंट था, रिस्पोंडेंट हैज गिवन दिस रिप्लाई, नाउ व्हाट यू वांट टू से ऑन दिस. सो द कंप्लेनेंट इज गिवन अ टाइम फॉर राइटिंग इज रिजॉइंडर, that whether this explanation is acceptable to me or not, that's what he is supposed to write. So that is a rejoinder. After these three documents are received, then the director discipline starts their processing or the scrutiny. तब तक it is more of a postman's job. Complaint आया, respondent को दिया, respondent का response आया, complainant को दिया, and complainant's rejoinder is. Remember, this rejoinder does not go to the respondent. This is very, very important. Why? Because when you chartered accountant approaches a lawyer for advice, lawyer लोगों का attitude क्या रहता है? Why we should open all our card just now? We will keep it in our reserve. अपने जो trump card है वो हम रखते हैं, क्योंकि lawyer के दिमाग में हमेशा there will be some court proceedings. But remember here, you don't get next opportunity. You have only one inning. That is your return statement. Complainant gets two innings because first the complainant and second the rejoinder. So here you don't get that chance. So whatever merits you are having, you must put in your return statement at the first place itself. Develop a habit of doing the job perfect. Anything, not only CA's work, anything in your personal life also, do it correct at the first stage itself. अगर आपको वो दुरुस्त करना चाहते हैं, रिपेयर करना चाहते हैं, रिवाइज करना चाहते हैं, then it is very, very expensive. So in our personal life also, we should have that mantra that do it perfect at the first stage itself. So this is the system where the scrutiny is started. Then the director discipline may require some additional papers from both the parties or either of the parties. For example, if some document is given in the regional language, like if suppose certain land records are in your Bengali language, for example, then they may ask you the English translation of that, or certain documents or agreements are in vernacular language, the regional language, then they will ask you for the English version of that. That is one. Another common method is that thing is that they may ask you the audited balance sheet of last 2-3 years, or they may ask you to give working papers. But the most important sometimes is, suppose your complaint is based on some local law, like Maharashtra Cooperative Societies Act or Maharashtra Public Trust Act, then those provisions the Delhi people may not be aware. So then you have to attach the act, the relevant extract, the provisions of the act to the council. So because your complaint is again under that act. So these are the usual additional paper that they ask for. Once they get all the papers, then the director discipline writes what is called as prima facie opinion. Pratham darshani, prima facie opinion. What it means is that suppose there are 6 complaints against you, 6 items. He will say 4 mein aap guilty nahi hai, but only on 2 you are prima facie guilty. So on first 4 you are not prima facie guilty. But this he has to keep before the board of discipline or the disciplinary committee, and then they have the right to either agree with the director discipline's observations or they have to disagree. For example, they say ki out of 6, director discipline says 4 may not guilty hai, 2 may guilty hai, but they will say no, in 3 he is guilty, in 3 he is not guilty. It could be anything. Once you are found guilty even on one item of misconduct, prima facie, I'm saying prima facie guilty, not finally guilty, then the hearing has to take place on that. Now, if it is on first schedule, then board of discipline. If it is the second schedule, then the disciplinary committee. I am just recapitulating the whole thing. First the complaint, then the respondent response by written statement. First the complaint, if it is a partnership, then they have to identify with the person who is answerable. Then the written statement of the respondent, then the complainant's rejoinder, then the additional information. After the additional information, the prima facie opinion. Now, prima facie opinion, it is sent, and then there is a hearing that takes place. In the hearing, both the parties are given opportunity, both can remain present. It's an inquiry. It's not a court trial. Remember, it's not a court trial. It's not a court case. It is an inquiry. So, they are giving opportunity. कि आपने कैसे काम किया, बताइए, whether you are there in a misconduct or not. So it's a very peacefully it is done. But you can have your lawyer or counsel with you. Complainant also can have his counsel with him, and the hearing takes place. After the hearing, the disciplinary committee or the board of discipline, they pass what is called as their findings or their report. If finally, what is the status, whether he is guilty or not. Suppose they say that yes, he is guilty. Suppose in prima facie opinion, you were held guilty on 3 counts, but finally they say no, he is guilty only on one of the items. So it could be anything. So that means the disciplinary committee or the board of discipline will say that you are guilty finally. So it is not now prima facie, it is guilty. Once you are held guilty, you are given one more opportunity as to what punishment should be given to you. So this is also important. And there you have to attend it alone, only yourself, no counsel, no person, anybody cannot accompany you. So it should be only you and you alone. So chartered accountant has to remain present alone. And then ये उसको रेनॉट होना पड़ता है कि ये वैसा हुआ, गलत हुआ, टेक्निकल रीजन है ये वो. Also you have to try there, and then they will pass what is called an order. Remember, so findings are means disciplinary committee report, then it is an order. Order is actually the end result of all these inquiries, findings, then the order. After the order and the punishment. So punishment order is appealable with the appellate authority within 90 days. You have to pay a fee of 5,500 plus GST in that particular appellate authority. Now, who is authorized to represent this? Basically, any other member of the institute, any advocate or any member of ICSI or ICWI. So these people are authorized to represent you. Then in the board of disciplinary hearings, these are basically quorum is of 2, and the government nominee's presence is not a mandatory there. These are all self-explanatory. In disciplinary committee, the quorum is that of 3. But at least one government nominee should be present. So suppose there are 3, all the 3 central council members are present, but not a single government nominee is there, then there is no quorum. So and the principles of natural justice are followed. Then because it is considered as civil court, section 21 says that all the authorities of the civil court are there with the disciplinary committee or the board of discipline. So they can call, they can summon the attendance of any person. There can be witnesses. In the first schedule, there is no provision before the BOD. There is no provision for witnesses. But in the second schedule, there is a provision for witnesses. For example, if the chartered accountant has done something wrong, then he can prove it by calling the witnesses that no, he was not there, or he was, like any criminal proceedings. Remember that any outsider, in fact, in that principles, I forgot to mention one very important aspect, that locus standi of the complainant is not necessary. Locus standi is not necessary का मतलब क्या है? Any outsider can file a complaint against you. Any outsider. Why? Because these are called semi or quasi criminal cases. So and there are professional blackmailers also. So any person जिसका उस कंपनी से कुछ लेना देना नहीं है, he is not a shareholder, he is not a director, he is not an employee, not an officer, he is not a lender, he is not a customer, he is not a regulator. कोई भी कंपनी से लेना देना नहीं है, फिर भी he can file a complaint. That is why there is no locus standi required, because it is a quasi criminal proceeding. कोई भी आप अगर किसी ने crime किया तो any person can file a complaint. Same way here also you cannot argue कि इसको क्या इसका क्या इससे लेना देना है. ये no relevance whatsoever. This you cannot argue. Punishments. What are the punishments? For the first schedule punishment, the punishments are of three types. One is reprimand. Reprimand means the warning that you are reprimanded, means ऐसा when it is a very technical default committed, then they reprimand. Reprimand in the sense कि it's a warning, don't do such things again. आप हम छोड़ देते हैं आपको, लेकिन you are held guilty, but you are reprimanded. Strictures are passed. Secondly, there could be a suspension for not exceeding 3 months. 3 महीने के लिए आपकी membership cancel हो जाती है. That means you are suspended. Remember, your membership itself is cancelled, not only the certificate of practice. So you are no longer a member of the institute. Gazette में your name is published that this chartered accountant's membership is terminated or suspended for a period of say 1 month, 7 days, 15 days, 3 months, whatever. For the first schedule, maximum is 3 months. Or there could be a fine up to rupees 1 lakh. There could be a fine up to rupees 1 lakh. So these are the 3 punishments for the first schedule. For the second schedule, similarly 3 punishments. One is reprimand, suspension of membership for any length of time. For example, 6 months, 2 years, 5 years, or even for life. Permanently you are debarred. Suppose you have committed some fraud, you have committed some very serious crime, then that also is punishable and you can be suspended for permanently also. And the next is fine up to rupees 5 lakhs rupees. So these are the usual 3 punishments for which are prescribed. But there are many indirect punishments which are very serious, friends, very serious. For example, you are disqualified from any government or RBI audit or any like government sector audit or bank audit for at least 3 years. So this is one. Even the private sector audits also now under section 139 of the Companies Act, you have to give a declaration at the same time of reappointment or appointment that there are no proceedings pending against you. Now, if the proceedings are pending against you, the management of the company, corporate, may not like to appoint you as an auditor. But your relationships are very strong and they know that you are not a guilty person, you are a good person, and that this complaint is very bogus complaint or a frivolous complaint, then they may say, okay, we don't mind even if you continue as an auditor. Or sometimes the complaint is very technical ground. ऐसा अगर है तो then, but the fact remains that you have to declare this to the company while you are getting appointed. You have to declare whether there are any complaints pending against you or whether there are any proceedings pending against you. And when we say that the proceedings are pending, once you are held prima facie guilty. So if you are held prima facie guilty, then that is the starting point of the proceedings. Till that time, anybody can file a complaint, frivolous complaint, and then you cannot say that he is disqualified. So in my opinion, whatever is the starting point is that you are held prima facie guilty. Then eligibility to train the articles is lost. You cannot employ any article trainees. So you have to then transfer them to some other chartered accountant or some such thing. So that is another thing. That is another indirect. So remember that if you don't get the audits, it's an indirect punishment that you will not get the fees. And our proceedings take at least 3 to 4 years. Now 3 to 4 years that plus 3 years, that means about 6 to 7 years, you are not getting any professional audit assignment. That you can imagine how much loss that you are incurring. So this is the indirect punishment is very serious. Our fine is just 1 lakh rupees, but this you may lose a fee of 50 lakhs rupees. Then the eligibility to train, so articles you cannot have, and it's a stigma. हमारा आपके नाम पर ये धब्बा है या कलंक है that you are held guilty. So these are the things which you have to keep in mind. Now I'll come back to one more interesting case, because these are theoretical part. It was not theoretical, it was practical. But now I'll come back to some stories again. Now remember, friends, that as I told you that there was a case where you cannot afford to, you have to constantly awake. One lady came to the office of a chartered accountant and uske साथ कुछ झगड़ा हुआ. And that lady went, that chartered accountant, for some work, he went outside his cabin. So what that lady did, from that mobile of that chartered accountant, he sent very dirty messages to herself. और पुलिस के पास गई एंड बताया कि दिस चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट हैज सेंट बैड मैसेजेस टू मी. एंड उसने पुलिस ने उसको अरेस्ट किया एंड ही वाज देयर एंड नाउ ही इज ऑन बेल. एंड नाउ शी आल्सो सेंड द फोटो ऑफ दैट स्क्रीन. ये गलत मैसेज, डर्टी मैसेज, ऑब्सीन मैसेज मुझे किया इस चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट ने. तो उसने चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट को इस प्रकार ही मरवा दिया. दैट मीन्स ही सेंट इट टू द इंस्टीट्यूट. That lady, later on, it transpired that that lady was the wife of a notorious gangster who had been killed in a police encounter. And the whole underworld was behind her, supporting her, and chartered accountant ka life miserable ho gaya. So that is why KYC norms. Whosoever comes to you, there is a KYC guideline of our institute that you should take the background. Whosoever comes to you should know the background. आप किससे साथ का deal कर रहे हैं. So that is another thing. So complainants, who are the complainants? Another case I will share with you. Mr. A was a chartered accountant. Mr. B was an engineer. They were very close friends. So both were doing business in a private limited company, an engineering business. Chartered accountant was full-fledged into it. He was sort of an executive director. But he had maintained his CUP, which was an just for a sentimental reason कि मैं इतना CA बन गया हूँ तो इसलिए मेरे पास certificate of practice है just, but you are not very actively practicing. Now B's son, B was an engineer, B's son wanted to do his CA, so he did his training under Mr. A. Correct? Now he passed his CA. He joined some job. After a few years, there was a dispute between A and B. As I told you, किसी भी business relationship में dispute तो होते ही है. तो A and B में dispute हुआ. Once that dispute took place, there were cross complaints against each other, criminal law, income tax, company law, everywhere. And to aggravate that matter, B's son filed a complaint against A, his own boss, under whom he did his training. Against his own boss, what was the complaint? That he was doing business without obtaining the permission of the institute. Because if you are doing some business and you are not obtaining the permission of the institute, then it's a misconduct. Clause 11 of first schedule, part 1. So remember that these are the things. That means you cannot know कि कहाँ से कहाँ complaint जाएगा. I will share with you some interesting cases further. Now, who complains? All our consumers, rather who are our consumers of our services, like our clients, the financial institutions, banks, lenders, investors, regulatory authorities. They can file complaint. Then your staff members can file a complaint. Suppose आपका अगर किसी स्टाफ के साथ झगड़ा हुआ तो he also has the nuisance power. He can file a complaint against you. Then article can file a complaint. Just now I explained to you. Then another thing is that your partners, your wife can also file a complaint against you. Your close relatives can file a complaint against you. Even the strangers can file the complaint against you. So these are the members of the society of which you are doing the audit, members of the shareholders of the company of which you are doing the audit. Your own friends also can file a complaint against you. Anybody can file a complaint. So this is another very dangerous area. Then complaints may be filed out of ego clashes. Yes. This is ego. आजकल मनुष्य को अहंकार बहुत ज्यादा है. So ego clashes are there. That younger director filed a complaint. Why? Because his ego was hurt. Because that firm did not accept her daughter as a dummy article. So his ego was hurt. Sometimes there is a professional rivalry. Because of that also complaints are filed. I have so many cases to share, but yes, we have the constraints of time. So sometime later, if I get the appropriate and adequate time, there are many things I have to share. But anyway, rivalry or any other, you can say, but the facts are twisted quite often. And as an arm twisting measure also the complaints are filed. That means आपके ऊपर pressure डालने के लिए complaint file किया. Suppose there is a dispute between A and B. auditor is C. A and B feel that अगर मैं C को trouble करता हूँ तो he will have some pressure against that other party. Because of that, the complaints are filed against the auditor. So, but उसका कुछ फायदा नहीं किसी को होता है, because it is, as I told you, it is chartered accountant को सताना is very easy, and therefore even if they file a complaint like this, chartered accountants are helpless. And I'll share with you some very interesting examples again. Existence of professional blackmailers are also there, which I mentioned just now. Then there are other exposures also. As I told you, unnecessarily press में आपके पास against आता है. Even consumer forum में people go. For example, you say you have given wrong advice on taxation, then they will go against they will go in the consumer court against you. Then press में bad publicity होती है. And then police also, they suppose if it is a criminal complaint, then they go to the police, and then suppose you have committed some fraud, you have committed some misappropriation, then this is a criminal element. So, or any misbehavior, that also. But friends, peer review is the thing which is actually preventive step. But we don't take that seriously. Unfortunately, as I told you, chartered accountants are seen only to manage the things. तो हम मैनेज करा लेते हैं ये, and the spirit behind it, the real purpose of that, we don't appreciate. Then now I'll deal with in a few minutes certain important clauses of first and second schedule. I'll wind up within 10-15 minutes, and then if there are any questions or queries, then I'll answer. Now first schedule part, there are 4 parts of first schedule. The first part 1 deals with the members who are in practice. Now in that, normally you are all aware that there are important items like you cannot advertise, you cannot solicit the clients, or you cannot accept or share the profits with any person other than a chartered accountant. Now our institute had permitted that interdisciplinary, that means you can have a partnership with a CS, or with a cost accountant, or with an architect, or with an engineer. If the other institutes, or even a lawyer, if the other institutes or the bar council also permit as a reciprocal understanding. Now I am told that CA and ICMA institute have now permitted their friends or their members to be partners with CAs, but bar council has not. So you cannot have a partnership with a lawyer. So this is very important aspect. So sharing of profits, then advertisement or soliciting the clients or answering to the tenders. There are many guidelines on that. Each and every part you can deal with at least half an hour. There are 34 items. Each and every I can elaborate on at least for 30 minutes. So, but it will be an endless story. But I'll highlight only the important ones. Now, most important is clause 8. Accepts audit work without the first communicating in writing with the previous auditor. Now these are, mark the words here. Previous auditor, who is the previous auditor? Not necessarily of the last year, but the previous auditor means who was holding the position of an auditor last. Iska matlab hai, suppose there is an entity for which last 2-3 years there was no tax audit. 4 years ago there was a tax audit. In between 3 years there was no turnover, no business, or for some reason there was no tax audit. Now again the tax audit is required. Then we have to inquire कि last tax audit किसने किया था. Moreover, there is no word used as NOC, no objection certificate, ऐसा किधर भी mention नहीं है. What is necessary is we have to communicate in writing and ask them whether they are aware of any professional or other reason why we should not accept the audit assignment. So this is all that is required. Then you have to wait reasonable time for his response. There is a guideline that our members should respond fairly promptly. This, remember that this applies to all sorts of audits, not only statutory audit, but tax audit, VAT audit, GST audit, concurrent audit, revenue audit, stock audit. Think of internal audit, think of any audit, and this provision applies. There are only 1 or 2 exceptions which are under the Income Tax Act. If there is special audit or something, then you did not communicate with the previous auditor. But otherwise, yes, in all cases, you have to write to the previous auditor. Then which address you have to write? which is last known or registered with you with the, but you can also now write in by email. But on which email ID? The email ID which is there on our institute's portal. So if that email ID you have to check, and if you address your communication to that address, then that is also sufficient. This is another very important aspect of this, that there is a special guideline. There are Council General guidelines are there, which were issued on 8th of August 2008. 888 is the date. So on that, one of the guidelines says that if you accept the audit, when the previous auditor's outstanding undisputed audit fees are pending, then that is also a misconduct. Remember, listen to it carefully, that if previous auditors undisputed audit fees are pending, undisputed, what is undisputed? Undisputed which are appearing in the balance sheet, which is signed by that person whose audit is there, like company or partners or whatever. Then, and if you accept the audit, that is considered to be an undisputed issue. And if you accept it, so that means you have to basically verify. So now when you write to that previous auditor, also mention whether there are any undisputed audit fees pending or unpaid. Otherwise, if you accept it, then that is a misconduct. So remember, this is to protect us. In fact, clients हमें उल्लू बनाते हैं, because if some auditor is strict, then what they do is they dodge his fees, they don't pay the fees and approach another chartered accountant. ये हमारे भले के लिए है, हमारे प्रोटेक्शन के लिए है, but we don't understand that. Moreover, the writing, or it should be done, communication should be done before accepting the audit. Remember, not at the time of signing the audit. So before accepting, so suppose there are evidences saying that you have already started the audit. There are exceptions provided, like for example, bank audit. Now bank audit, usually it has to be done within 3 to 4 days time. So there is no sufficient time. So there they say that you can, pending the response, you can start the audit. Remember, even if you are appointed by a regulator, like Registrar of Companies or Registrar of Cooperative Societies or RBI or whosoever, even then communication with the previous auditor is important. Similarly, if you ask now, there is a special guideline that if you ask him that is there anything that he would like to enlighten you on that, then it is also necessary that the previous auditor, in the normal course, he will not disclose anything. But if you specifically ask, then he can provide you the reasons why he is discontinuing. So suppose there are some golmaal, there are some irregularities in the accounts, then he can caution you. Either you be very careful because the accounts are not proper. It can be anything, but of course you have to write in a very decent and tactful language. So this is, but now it is permitted, or perhaps rather it has become our duty. Because otherwise, they don't disclose the facts to us, and then we come into trouble. So this is acceptance of audit work without communicating with the previous auditor. Secondly, here at this stage, I must also mention to you very practical advice, that as I told you that there are always disputes among directors, trustees, managing committee members, partners of the client. Always make a practice that every year, at least one hard copy of the balance sheet you keep with you, which is signed by all the directors, all the trustees, all the managing committee members, because then at least they cannot subsequently disown the thing कि हमें ये balance sheet मालूम ही नहीं था. So at least this is a first word of caution that I would give you. Accept the audit work without first ascertaining the requirements of the Companies Act. For example, if the previous auditor is, whether he is removed, whether he has retired, whether he has resigned, under which circumstances a new auditor is appointed, that you have to verify, apply the provisions of the Companies Act correctly, whether there is a board meeting properly held, whether there is an EGM or AGM properly held, whether proper notice is given, whether there is proper attendance, whether there is a proper quorum, where all the procedures of the meetings are followed, and whether there are minutes properly available. All this you have to ensure. Sometimes they say that suppose in the cash method of accounting, how do we verify whether fee is undisputed? Remember that you are chartered accountant. There are many ways of ascertaining that. Because the client may, this is one very important aspect I am just pointing you out to you, that your clients will show that yes, see, we have paid the check to him. But unfortunately, it is not clear as to this check is paid for his audit fee or his other tax consultancy fee or other professional fee. The previous auditor will say, yes, I have received the check, but I treat it as my professional fee and not my audit fee. So remember that even if your client shows you that the check has been paid, you have to be very careful. And then also this procedure, as I told you, the company law procedure or whatever procedure is prescribed under the respective act, like Trust Act or Partnership Act, but Cooperative Societies Act. Wherever these such procedures are prescribed, you have to ensure that your appointment is properly done and whether previous auditor, whether his discontinuance is also properly done, and that also you have to ensure. Then professional assignments where which is based on you cannot have a percentage fees like whatever result I give, it is not result based fees. Like मैं अगर आपको I'll get you loan of 2 crore rupees and my fee will be 3%. No, it is not permitted. So also you cannot say that I'll give you an income tax refund and my fee will be 10% of the refund. This is also not permitted. You charge for your work, for your knowledge, for your time. You cannot say मैं रिजल्ट लाया इसलिए उसका परसेंटेज फी लेता हूँ. Then otherwise आपका काम ब्रोकर का हो गया. Then you are not a professional. You must maintain the dignity and the standards of our profession. Then engages in another, this is clause 11, engages in another business or occupation. There are many interesting cases on that, but remember that there is a very common for chartered accountants that they are doing some business in the private limited company. Usually उनके spouse के साथ ही रहता है, husband wife दो ही director रहते हैं, shareholder रहते हैं, and they do business. So also our chartered accountants have unnecessarily and unduly have the ghost of this HUF in their head or mind. तो ऐसे कि मेरा ये बिजनेस HUF में है, it is not permitted, friends, because if you are the HUF and you are the karta or otherwise, but you are taking active part in the business, then you cannot say that it is just HUF business. Whatever is there, you have to apply to the institute for the permission. So in that particular case where that boy filed a complaint against his principal, the principal, Mr. A, had no defense at all. He said, yes, I was acting as an executive director. मैं कैसे defend करूं? Then the disciplinary committee passed strictures against this boy, that complainant, saying that, see, he has no defense, we will deal with that complaint, we will deal with the member in whatever manner. But this is not correct. This brings disrepute to the profession. हम chartered accountant आपस में ही लड़ते हैं for unnecessary reasons. So this is not correct. So remember that हमारी जो शान है, हमारा जो dignity है, that you have to maintain. Engages in another business, so that I told you. There are many cases on that, but I have to rush through. Then we have, these are very self-explanatory, that suppose this is part 2, that means for the members who are in service. So if you are sharing the emoluments of the employee, then for example, you are appointing some agency, you are appointing some professional person, and uske fees में से आप थोड़ा percentage लेते हैं, तो it is nothing but a bribery. So that is not permitted. Or accepts any part of the fees, profits or gains from any lawyer or any other broker or any such thing. Or that means you cannot share your fees or profit with any person other than a chartered accountant. You can have partnership only with a chartered accountant. Then these are very straight. These are not being a fellow, acts like a fellow. You know, after 5 years you are called as a fellow. Then next is, this is important, other misconduct. Remember, section 22 defines the misconduct as any item mentioned in the first or second schedule or other misconduct. Other misconduct is a wide term. Anything under the sun can be other misconduct. That cannot be defined. कि ये misconduct other है, ये, but still they have tried to codify. What are that? 2 items they have mentioned, other misconduct. That means a person, suppose he is held guilty, a chartered accountant is held guilty by court under any other law. He has committed some crime, he has committed some theft, he has committed some embezzlement, and he is held guilty. Or he has committed even a murder perhaps. In fact, there are dowry cases also in this. So suppose he has done some which is antisocial thing, then, and if he is held guilty by some other court, and there are the punishment there under that law is not exceeding 6 months imprisonment. Chartered accountant may be imprisoned. So if it is less than 6 months, then it is falling under first schedule. But if it is more than 6 months imprisonment for a chartered accountant, under that law, then it is second schedule offense. So this is first part. This is bringing disrepute to the profession. A chartered accountant doing criminal things or irregular things, even traffic offense, or if you even travel without ticket, that also could be, because press में ऐसा ही आएगा, chartered accountant head for traveling without ticket. So yeah, this is bringing disrepute to the profession. The next item is in the opinion of the council brings disrepute to the profession. So हमारी profession को कोई भी क्षति नहीं होनी चाहिए, उसकी जो reputation है, that should not be affected adversely. So that there could be many such items where your misbehavior is bringing disrepute to the profession. So even if you are not held finally guilty, still जो press में जो आता है ना, that brings you bad publicity to the profession. In the second schedule also there are highlights, which only 4 or 5 items I will deal with. Suppose you sign the financial statements of some of your relative, like your brother, your wife, or the relatives are defined under that. Who are your relatives? So if you sign balance sheet of your relative, or if you are signing something where you are interested in that particular entity, what do you mean by substantial interest? That is also defined. That 10% or 20% of their equity you are holding. Even if you are having one share of any company, that also you are disqualified from doing the audit. That is under the Companies Act. So also your indebtedness. Now these are many aspects. Indebtedness also in the guideline is, suppose you have taken loan from that particular company, then you cannot sign the audit of that company because you are obliged. So, but here this particular aspect is that the relative. So if it is a relative, you cannot sign the financial statements of the relative. Previously, they are mentioned that you can sign if you make a disclosure in the report that this person is my relative. But now that is gone. So now once you have the substantial interest or a relative, then you cannot sign the balance sheet of that person. Then fails to disclose. This clause 5, 6, 7, 8 and 9 usually go together. Usme se clause 7 is the most important one. Clause 7 is that does not exercise due diligence or is grossly negligent. Now previously there was only grossly negligent, but now they have added this under the 2006 Amendment Act. They have added this under the 2006 Amendment Act. Even that earlier provision which I discussed, relative ka balance sheet, there also earlier it was by disclosure you could do the audit, but now that is gone. So it was all amendments made in the year 2006. So does not exercise due diligence. This is very important. I'll give you a very concrete example of what you mean by that. What is the difference between gross negligence and lack of due diligence? See friends, there was a large company with 600 crore rupees turnover. And the firm was doing the audit. The company had a corporate office in Mumbai. There was 40-50 persons working there, and they had the mines in Northeast region. Now, they had taken a term loan from some PSU bank, 100 crores loan. This unit went NPA, and as soon as any company becomes NPA, remember that the public sector banks have a practice to file a complaint against the auditor. Because they try to safeguard their employees or the managers, that because maybe that at the time of sanctioning the loan, there should be a collusion between the management of the company and the management of the bank. But once it becomes bad, they try to make a scapegoat of the chartered accountant. This is very common. So they did that. Now, this particular firm, although it was a mid-sized firm, had maintained excellent working papers. Working papers is the key of our work, of our execution of our work. They had maintained excellent working papers. So we sent the working papers showing how nicely we had done the audit. We're taking care of all guidelines and everything. After that, the firm received only 2 questions from the director. As I told you, the director recipient can ask you any further information. Remember and listen to this very carefully, that what they asked, one was whether you had written to the banks directly for confirmation of balances or confirmation of accounts. Now this firm told me that no, we had not written, but we have the photocopies of all the bank statements with us. So then I said, very good. So we said that we will send it. Then the second question was whether you had written to the debtors or creditors for the confirmation of balances. There they said, no, we had not written. Now remember, this is also very, very important in our audit work now. Third party evidence, there are special standards on auditing on that third party evidence. So we only year after year, decades after decades, we just make a mention that in our Mao Caro and Caro and everywhere, that all the balances of debtors, creditors and lenders and depositors and everyone are subject to confirmation. But we don't even show that we had attempted to obtain the confirmation. And if there are some major confirmation missing, then you should have the courage. Unfortunately, our profession is lacking courage. Our profession has become spineless because we cannot be assertive. So there is courage is lacking, and therefore how you should report, that also has been, there is a guideline of the institute. There are standards on that. SA 700 and onwards, you can find how to report, how to disqualify, how to give a qualified report, or how to make a disclaimer. All that is guideline is there, but you should read and follow those. So fails to obtain gross negligence. So there, it was finally they told me, the firm told me that actually it was a CBI case and all the documents of that company were fabricated documents, including bank statements. Now, what will you say, friends? So it was a super satyam manipulation. So all the documents were manipulated or fabricated, and even the bank statements were fabricated. Those bank accounts never existed at all, or even if they were existed, the bank statements were fabricated. So many instances. That means, see, now I'm telling you the distinction between the lack of due diligence and gross negligence. Insofar as they had obtained the bank statements copies, you cannot say that they are lacking due diligence because they have obtained the documents. Or sorry, you cannot say that they are grossly negligent because they had obtained the document. But lack of due diligence, why? Because they did not verify the documents. So first is not obtaining is a gross negligence. But even if you obtain, but you did not verify the correctness of that, is a lack of due diligence. So this is the distinction between lack of due diligence and grossly negligent. Then fails to obtain information. Now remember, it is your duty to obtain information, not the client's or other person's duty to provide you information. You have to have your questionnaire. You have to make a checklist. You have to ask certain things to the client, and only then you have to satisfy yourself that the accounts are proper. You cannot wait. In his MRL he has written like this. I relied on that. You cannot say. You are an auditor. In fact, what is most important in our profession, as I told you, good faith ke alawa, good faith means you should never do anything. Most important is professional skepticism. What is professional skepticism? That means you should not suspect everything, but you should have a habit of verifying from other sources. In fact, of late, had I had the sufficient time, and there are many such cases, of late, there were stock audits done by the small auditors. The stocks were to the tune of 300 crores, 500 crores, and these chartered accountants, as stock auditors, they had given the report as a certificate within just 3-4 days time without verification. Now the skepticism is that इतना बड़ा कंपनी मेरे पास स्मॉल सर्टिफिकेट के लिए क्यों आया? Because इनके stocks 500 crores है, उनका turnover 5,000 crore है, they must be having big firms of chartered accountants with them. Why they approach a small person like me for this certificate, and why they are pressurizing, and they are paying some 10,000-20,000 rupees, and they insist that you should give the certificate in 2-3 days. Why they are coming to me? This is the first question that you should ask. In fact, I happen to be a director of a small bank. Now, when a big corporate comes to us for loan, हमारा first question रहता है कि ये बड़ा कंपनी हमारे पास लोन लेने के लिए क्यों आया? Their turnover is 1,000 crores. They might need the loan of very large amount of say 200 crores or whatever. Then why they have come? This is called professional skepticism. This professional skepticism you have to always be aware of, and you should always apply. Similarly, you should train your people. Fails to obtain information, or fails to invite attention Suppose you know certain things in the accounts which in your report you should draw their attention. For example, bank reconciliations are not done, bank statements are not done, or debtors confirmations are not obtained. Then you should draw the attention of the reader that debtors confirmation have not been received. Still, you may say it is true and fair. Now I will come to true and fair view, and I will give you only 2 instances, and then I will stop. There is an essay 700 and all, 700, 705 that how you should be careful in making your report. What happened was that earlier in these credit cooperative societies, when that Anna Hazare movement was there were hundreds of cases filed by the Register of Cooperative Societies. The common factor in all those cases was that the credit cooperative society, which were handled by mainly managed by the politicians, and there were a lot of misappropriations and all sort of ghotalas were there. But our chartered accountants used to do that audit very nicely, and they used to get so many points which are not proper. So to that audit report, they annexed the schedules saying that these are irregularities in the accounts. Unfortunately, when the final audit report, they said subject to all this, the accounts show a true and fair view, this is not permitted, friends, because they are showing a profit of 1 crore rupees in the profit and loss account. But if you give effect to all your observations in the annexure, there could be a loss of 15 crore rupees. Now, when you are aware that there is a loss of 15 crore rupees, which you are yourself saying, how do you say that 1 crore profit and loss account is true and fair? So this is obviously wrong. So this way you should have the courage, you should have the boldness to say that this profit and loss account does not show true and fair view. This is the correct approach. But we people lack courage. We don't have the guts to write like that. अपने को डर लगता है कि ये client हमारे पास से चला जाएगा. This is one. Secondly, that if suppose the data is not available at all, कुछ भी ठिकाना नहीं है records का, accounts are not proper, nothing, vouchers are not there, then you should have the courage to say, I am unable to express opinion on these accounts because basic data itself is missing. So that courage you should have. That means so invite attention to this is that clause. All this clause number 7 to 9 deal with that. In clause 10, there could be hundreds. And now last I'll be concluding with only 2 cases so that which are eye-opening. Let me complete this 10, item 10. Fails to keep the client's money. Now, if you get client's money, you should have a separate account to deposit. Unless you can show that this was immediately spent. But if suppose he has given to you for a long time, to keep it long time, then you should have a separate account. I'll now deal with only 2 live instances which are very, very important and which will give you an insight into the disciplinary action. There are, if you can, clause 1 is important. If you contravene any of the provisions of the act or the guidelines of the institute, then it is a misconduct. There are many things self-explanatory, but we need a separate session. Defalcates or embezzles any money, misappropriation, bribery, all these comes under this. So these are the 2 schedules which highlight, only the highlights I dealt with. Now 2 cases, very, very important cases. Sanjay ji, I can continue for 5 minutes, no?
Yes, sir. I think the presence of the participants denotes that.
Good.
Yes, sir.
Thank
Please,
you.
sir.
Thank you. Because maintaining the time discipline is also a part of our ethics. So that is why I asked and sought permission. So, very interesting case. There was a company, you know, the executor and trustee companies are there. That means the person who has made a will, either he may appoint an executor, some of his relatives, son or somebody, or he can give it to a corporate entity. Suppose he has huge properties and he doesn't want to give it to any individual. So there are executor and trustee companies. Now there was one executor and trustee company which was a subsidiary of a nationalized bank. Now they execute the wills after the client dies, obviously. They were executing one will. That particular testator who had made the will, his daughter was in the picture. So she said, this will should be interpreted this way so that I will get more property from my father. Unfortunately, the managers of that company did not listen to her. So she wrote to the directors. Directors also did not intervene. They also did not respond to her complaints. Now, to teach a lesson to the directors, what she did, she engaged another chartered accountant to find out the flaws in the balance sheet or the audited financial statements. Just to teach a lesson, उनको सबक सिखाने के लिए उसने ये किया. Then that other chartered accountant pointed out that there are some very technical errors, like, AS3 was not reported, cash flow statement, or some other thing. Now remember that these were not at all relevant, and these had no bearing whatsoever on the true and fair view of the balance sheet. They did not have any bearing on that. Still, he wrote like this. That lady filed a complaint to the Registrar of Companies, and the Registrar of Companies summoned all the directors and also the auditors. And he realized that this is a frivolous complaint. But then he was helpless. He said, yes, the fact remains that आपने AS3 को report नहीं किया है और 2-3 फलाने AS को नहीं report किया है. I appreciate that this has nothing to do with the true and fair, and this has nothing to do with that lady's grievance. लेडी का ग्रीवेंस कुछ और है कि उसको प्रॉपर्टी नहीं मिला, लेकिन कंपनी के बैलेंस शीट में क्या है उसका से लेना देना नहीं है. बट स्टिल ही सेड नाउ यू हैव टू कंपाउंड दैट ऑफेंस. So composition money, all directors paid 5,000 rupees, the auditor also paid 5,000 rupees, and they thought that the matter is over. Unfortunately, friends, so this is another aspect which I mentioned you, that this Registrar of Companies, when they come across these things, they just file the papers as information to the institute. So they don't file a complaint. This is an ideal case of information case. Now they did like this, and now directors were scot-free because they just paid 5,000 rupees. That lady did not get anything what she wanted, but the poor chartered accountant is facing the music for last 5-6 years of our disciplinary case. This is the bad part of our disciplinary mechanism, that all concerned persons are scot-free. Sometimes in a bribery case, जिस officer ने bribe लिया है, he is reinstated in the duty, everything is getting, but poor chartered accountant उसके suspicion है bribery का, he has to suffer the music for next 5-10 years also. This is the bad part, yes, but ultimately it brings disrepute to the profession. Now I will finally end with one very important case where that highlights the importance between pure legal issue and the ethical issue. What is the difference between legal issue and ethical issue? This is very important, friends. See, there are cases where you have given a wrong advice, there was penalty under the Income Tax Act, you got the penalty dropped in the appeal for any reason, on technical reason or some case law or some jadoo magic you performed or whatever reason, the penalty is dropped. But the fact remained that you gave a wrong advice and there was a concealment. For example, you did not notice that section 50C of Income Tax Act was attracted, or section 56 was attracted, that you did not advise the client at all. So fact is that you have committed a misconduct. So now when such thing is there, and even if in appeal under the Income Tax Act the penalty is dropped, still you cannot say that your advice was correct and that misconduct still remains. Another case which I am now dealing with is that one chartered accountant gave a check to his cousin. The cousin was not a good person. Cousin was a vagabond person. He requested the chartered accountant to give a check on the basis of which, suppose 50 lakhs check he gave, on the basis of which he will get money from outsiders, saying that देखो मेरा chartered accountant brother है, उसने मुझे 50 lakh दिया है. He wanted to produce a film. That person wanted to produce a film, but his reputation was not good. Now nobody gave him money, but this person was not good. He deposited that check. It was bounced, and then he filed a complaint against his own cousin who was a chartered accountant, saying that इसका check bounce हो गया. So 138 का complaint under the Negotiable Instruments Act he filed, and that chartered accountant was convicted because he managed the lower court, that complainant. Now this person has filed an appeal to the, because for the paucity of time, I cannot elaborate many things. But in the now perhaps considering all the facts and circumstances, the High Court may acquit him. High Court may say that you are not guilty, you are not committed any crime. But still, friends, one aspect remains, that the chartered accountant issued a check without ascertaining that he had sufficient balance in the account. That means the check was obviously a bogus check. Secondly, he gave the check with full knowledge that this check would not be deposited. Instead, the other persons would be induced to give the loan to that person. That means knowingly he has issued a check, we had no balance, and he knew that the check would not be presented. So that itself is unethical. So this is unethical. So this is the difference between purely legalistic thing and unethical thing. There are there are dozens of cases which I can share, but I know that you are on a Sunday. I don't want to keep you hungry, and this is the lunch time that one must break for. But I thank Sandeep ji for giving this wonderful opportunity of sharing whatever experience I have in the disciplinary cases of Code of Ethics, and I wish that all the members or the participants or all the members of your Kolkata study circle be 100 miles away from the disciplinary mechanism and code of ethics, and all should have a very smooth, careful, but vigilant and diligent practice so that they are not inviting trouble for themselves. And I thank once again, wish you good luck. Thank you very much, and Jai Hind.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot. It's really, sir, आपने जो starting में बताया था, it will be very interactive session with lots of case studies. हमें तो ऐसा लग रहा था जैसे live cases हमारे सामने आ रहे हैं. Code of ethics was not so easy to understand like you have made today. It was really great, sir. And really, we should not go by just good faith and all. We have to conduct the documentation, audit documentation as per the standard of auditing. Lots of things we have to learn from you, sir. Again, in the some time in the future, again we will take some sessions, some specific topics from this chapter. It will be great help for the delegates because even in the Eastern Zone, our chairman has taken as integrity is a most important part of our profession. So how we should make the integrity ourselves intact, it's very important. So very heartful thanks to you, sir. Thank you once again. And sir, a token of love, just 1 second, sir. So it's a small token of love from our study circle, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. It's and most probably, sir, it's our opportunity that because of this new innovation in the lockdown, we have connected through virtual and we have heard you. It was a great, sir. Thanks a lot. And
thank you very much. Thank you. All the best to you.
Thanks a lot, sir. And thanks to all the delegates who have joined us.
How many were there? How many were there?
Currently, it's 84.
Acha, good.
It was full house, 100 was also achieved. So it was a great session from starting to end. How मतलब 2 घंटे कैसे निकल गए पता ही नहीं चला, sir, with the lots of live case studies.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. Any delegate, if they have any question, please raise your hand so that I can unmute you and you can ask your question. Otherwise, I am allowing all to you can unmute and ask your question. Sir is there for 5 minutes. Is there? Yeah.
Sir, there is a question.
Yeah, please.
Suppose I am a practicing CA and wants to be a sleeping partner in my family business. Can I apply to the institute for permission, and is there any possibility that they will give permission?
You can apply, nothing prevents you from applying. but it is very less likely. It is because they will ask you so many questions as to why do you still insisting on remaining as a partner, and how you prove that you are a sleeping partner. Because you may not be signing anything, but behind the curtain you may be actually doing it. So they will ask you many questions, how much time you are sparing. The most important thing they will ask is that if you say that you are a sleeping partner, then they will verify whether your other partners are competent enough to do the business. Because some other partners are not there, then probably you will have a not very easy task to get the permission. So it depends on facts and circumstances of the case.
I'll just give in 1 minute the facts that why I want to do that. I have one property in my name, okay, and my brother wants to do business in that
Mr.
property.
Junjunwala, sir, if it's some specific question, then it will be better to directly not in this forum.
You may share my email or something, but basically, as I told you, that it will depend on facts and circumstances of the case. Yeah, you can send an email to me if you wish.
Charan sir, we will share with the email address of the sir. You can contact me.
Yeah.
Okay. Please text me or anything. Just WhatsApp me your number. We will give you the
I will also send my email if you.
Yes. Thank you, sir. And Mr. Brajesh want to ask something. Yes, sir.
सर आपका डेलिब्रेशन बहुत ही अच्छा था. आपके एक्सपीरियंस का हम लोगों को बहुत फायदा मिलेगा. एक चीज जानना था कि सर जैसे हम लोग भी प्रैक्टिशनर हैं और जितना रेस्ट्रिक्शंस वो ऑडिट के लिए ही है, अगर हम कंसल्टेंसी बिजनेस में है, प्योर कंसल्टेंसी बिजनेस में या ऑडिट में भी है, तो सर हेंस फॉरवर्ड हम लोग क्या अकाउंटिंग स्टैंडर्ड ऑन अकाउंटिंग अपना जो कोड ऑफ एथिक्स है, प्लस अपने शेयर फीस नहीं कर सकते, एडवर्टाइजमेंट नहीं कर सकते, इतना रिस्ट्रिक्शन और बाउंड्री के अंदर काम करना सर कितना पॉसिबल होगा?
In fact, many people are finding it difficult to continue in the practice, and unfortunately new members are also not coming. And one very important aspect perhaps I did not mention is that the whole cause of our trouble is that we are not united enough. We don't have any collective strength. That is why the government also imposes a lot of rather undue regulation, and we do not resist it at the appropriate time. There is no unity. I often say that on the rickshawalas and bhajiwalas are more organized than us. But otherwise, see, we have never shown our collective strength anywhere. And that is why, these type of rather excessive regulations are coming. So we should be diligent on that also. But yes, I agree with you. It is very difficult to continue. Once that NOCLAR was announced, many big four firms also discontinued the audit. NOCLAR, as you know, NOCLAR means non-compliance with laws and regulations. That means in the course of audit, if you come across any irregularities, you are supposed to deal with them or rather report them. Now there are hundreds of irregularities always there in any company. Then you are supposed to report. Then actually many big four firms discontinued the audits, and now the registrar of companies, as you are aware, they are asking you questions as to why you resigned. So yes, I agree entirely with you that the things are becoming difficult and we are very vulnerable. So I agree.
सर 1 जुलाई 2017 जब मोदी जी सीए डे के
नहीं तो उसके बाद तुम 2005 के बाद गए हो।
हेलो सर बोलूं? सर मैं कह रहा था कि 2017 1 जुलाई सीए डे के फंक्शन पे हमारे प्रधानमंत्री मोदी जी ने हम लोगों को कितना भरा बुरा कहा था उस दिन कि हम लोगों ने ये अब नोटबंदी के समय में सबका ऑफिस 12 बजे रहता है, हम लोग इतने साल से ड्यू डिलिजेंटली अपना सब कुछ करते हुए, फ्रॉड को डिटेक्ट करते हुए, अपने को बचाते हुए, लेकिन उस दिन को हम लोगों का सारा किया धरा खत्म हो गया. हम लोग को फिर से शुरू करना पड़ेगा अपना विश्वास जमाने के लिए.
यस वी नीड टू इंट्रोस्पेक्ट. हमें कड़ा आत्मपरीक्षण करना पड़ेगा कि हमारी इमेज ऐसी क्यों बनी. And to some extent, or rather to a great extent, as I told you that there was a note there that please avoid bringing chartered accountant certificates as the same are often found unreliable. अगर हम इंट्रोस्पेक्शन करते हैं और हमारी खुद की वर्किंग स्टाइल जांच करते हैं, तो then perhaps we also realize that yes, we are not doing the job properly. That is, I am not generalizing this, but yes, to large extent this is true.
Sir, we knew it very well कि 3-4 दिन में बैंक ऑडिट नहीं हो सकता.
ब्रजेश जी, Rajesh ji, thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Other delegates also have some question.
Okay, sir.
Thank you
Sorry,
for your
sir.
time,
Thanks.
sir. Last question we will take.
Sir.
Yeah. Yeah, Gautam ji, please.
Yes. Are we allowed to have our website to, because there is a restriction on advertisement. So, but can we do our website and advertise?
Yes, there are express guidelines. In fact, it is in vogue for more than 10-15 years. They have issued guidelines as to what kind of website you can have. They have given you the particular details as to only this much detail. किसके फोटो लगा सकते हैं, then you have to give what information you have to disclose on the website. Everything is permitted, but it is controlled and regulated. So there you see website guidelines of our institute. You can see them on the website of the institute. Yes, it is. Even advertisement guidelines are there. Tender acceptance guidelines are there. Everything is there. In fact, there are ethical standards board. In fact, Ranjit ji was a member of that, or perhaps he was the chairman. And then there are interactive site also. Ethical standards board ki site hai. So there are many things which are available, but only thing is that it should occur to us that yes, on this issue we should verify. Unfortunate part is that we take many things for granted, and therefore we don't even go to verify these things. But yes, everything, all guidance is available on the ethical standards board website.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Shall we close?
Sir, Govindji, do you have any question? Otherwise, we will close now. I think, sir, it's a great session, sir. Once again, thank you for your time, sir. Thank you, all the delegates.
Yes, thank you.
Now we are ending the session. Thanks, sir.